Well, we're about to have the conversation that everybody seems to love, and that is conference realignment talk. That's right. We're going to close this week and open up this weekend with a conversation about the potential of conference realignment again in college football. And why? Because of recent reports that Texas and Oklahoma, two behemoth programs, no one can deny, they are two elite programs overall in college football for what they bring to the table, winning or not, that won out of the Big 12. They are the premier programs in that conference. They now potentially won out for the SEC. That's the reports. Obviously, it would make the SEC a complete gauntlet of a conference and potentially cripple the Big 12. That would obviously affect West Virginia University, who we cover here at WV Sports Now, and potentially even cover impacting other schools. We're also going to talk on how that impacts the Pitt Panthers and their conference of the ACC and if they should want WVU, because we know they didn't before. Should that change? How will this affect all of college football? Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. Contact Doug Martin for all your lawn care needs at 412-849-5894. Still time left in the summer to hit him up. I'm Mike Osti. That's Mike Vukovacan. And I think we're going to get mic'd up over this one, Mike. So we can start many different angles here. There's a couple angles we're going to touch on, and it's going to be wall-to-wall conference realignment talk on this show. First off, I guess I will ask, do you think this is really going to happen? And if Texas and Oklahoma do find themselves, because they missed the Big 12 conference call, they're clearly sending the subtle messages, and they're staying together, which is weird for the rivals, that they want to do this. Obviously, money's involved. I don't know if that's going to even split the SEC, because you could really split that into two major conferences if they would both go there. But is this really going to happen? And if this does happen, does this really cripple the Big 12? Does this make the Big 12 no longer a viable major conference? It is with those two, and Oklahoma's been a playoff team. Texas maybe should be, but it just feels like it would be in dire straits if they both would leave.
Yes, yes, and yes.
I don't normally get yeses when I ask questions.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I don't think this would have come out. The only way this doesn't happen is if Texas A&M has a lot more power than people realize. They're the ones that reportedly leaked the story to get this out.
Right.
They want no part of. They went to the SEC aside from money, but to get away from Texas, and they don't want to be joined by them again. They want to have their own little island in the SEC as far as Texas goes, the state of Texas goes. But it takes the majority. I guess it would take 4 no votes to nix this whole thing, and obviously Texas A&M would vote no.
Yeah, they've already kind of made it clear that you guys should have got the vote initially. You criticized us for going initially.
So they would need 3 more, and whether that could happen or not. But I think it's going to happen, and I think it's just a matter of when. If programs with the power of Oklahoma and Texas
usually get what they want.
Yeah, when they give indications that they want to join your conference, no matter how big the SEC is, they're going to come. It's just a matter of I guess the things they're talking about now, they're going to have to work through and see how they can make this happen. Is the fact that their deal goes through 2025. How can they shorten that? But it's a shame. It's a shame for traditionalists of college football, in college sports. I shouldn't say college football, but really college football. That's what Texas and Oklahoma for. And just to have them join the SEC would be great for football, no question about that. But just it would kill the Big 12. There's no chance. It would be just like the Big East. There would be no chance to survive.
Yeah, so you don't buy into any of that talk. This is also was brought up that if that would occur, maybe the Big 12's method of reaction could be bring on UCF, which of course has been claiming they're with the big boys. They claim their fake national title. They don't normally play top 15 teams, but if you throw them there, maybe they would occasionally bring them in, bring Cincinnati, bring SMU, these teams that have been non-Power 5 really competitive recently, and then have that be the conference. To me, if you do that, it still doesn't feel major. Even if you add UCF in, it still doesn't feel like a major conference.
No, it's just masquerading a pig. There's nothing.
Lipstick on a pig, yeah.
Lipstick on a pig. There's nothing there. There's no sizzle there.
Right.
The sizzle was Oklahoma and Texas. No matter how bad Texas was, they were Texas. And Oklahoma basketball has been coming back the last few years, and they've always been there for football. But no, and the other thing that I read is they could possibly try to raid the Pac-12.
And the Pac-12 has been down.
Yeah, that's an unstable conference. And there was talk I read last night, one of the reports, that two of their big targets would be Arizona and Arizona State, along with
good. Not Oklahoma and Texas, though. That's not exactly. That level.
Yeah, exactly. If that would be the plan, I guess. Raid the Big 12 or the Pac-12, and then get one of those schools that you mentioned, primarily probably Cincinnati,
right,
and one of the Florida schools. But that doesn't do anything. I just don't think it would survive, and I think what all this would set up for is another possibly major realignment throughout college football again with all the conferences.
I think that's what it would, and I think that's kind of something that people are not talking about enough. They're having, and we're going to have this conversation. They're having the conversation of, oh, this would do this to West Virginia, this would do this to this conference. Should the ACC take WVU, which we'll get to here in a second. But I think because you would have, let's face it, because there's been talk, people have also been saying, well, oh my God, programs like Oklahoma State, West Virginia University, Texas Tech, they would all of a sudden no longer be Power 5. If you look at the money, the revenue, the fan interest, the success, and the facility, which we again have a tour of WVU's new facility there by Neil Brown on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Those programs scream Power 5. They're not Oklahoma and Texas in football, but they're Power 5. I think it would trigger an overall realignment because you'd have to do something. You can't just have all of them all of a sudden be mid-majors. I don't even think the mid-majors would love that. I mean, they just would be stomping all through everything. So I think it would trigger moving everything. I think the Big 12 would absolutely be dead. I don't even think it'd be a slow death. I think it'd be very similar to what happened with the Big East. Once certain schools left and you had the big boys leave and everybody followed, then the Big East in basketball was able to stabilize, but the Big East in football just didn't become a thing any longer because there's no point, even though there were some teams like Connecticut was left there by themselves for a while, UConn, but they weren't going to, there wasn't really going to be a football conference any longer. I think it'd be similar to that. Now, from the West Virginia perspective, Mike, they're kind of always in the middle of conference realignment. I think probably because it's a major program that has success, but obviously in terms of media market, they share that. Their top media market they would bring would be Pittsburgh, where we're sitting, and Pitt already brings that. So it's a weird situation, but they've also been the focus of this. What would happen to West Virginia? Would West Virginia, I certainly feel they would need to immediately, right now, probably Shane Lyons needs on the phone to get the hell out of the Big 12. And they landed there. It's been okay. It's kind of made sense culturally in some aspects. They've been competitive there in some aspects. But the ACC didn't want them last time they were realigning the conferences, mostly because they only wanted one team from each media market. That was part of it as well. And they had Pitt, of course. But they had nowhere else to go. They had to be in a major conference. They're there. So for anyone who hates where they've been, this is just they had to be there. But now moving forward, would they need to immediately be proactive to get out of the Big 12? And if that's the case, should the ACC want West Virginia that they didn't before? Because it seems like that would be the seamless transition if they could get in the ACC. The natural rivals would be there. It would be a major conference. They play a competitive schedule. It would be similar to what they have. They have a chance to win it occasionally. It wouldn't be like if they fell in the SEC somehow where they would have no chance in football. And recruiting wouldn't even be all that different potentially. But the ACC didn't want them before. So if that doesn't occur, then I don't know where they go. There's thoughts of maybe they would actually go in the Pac-12 if the Big 12 would dissolve. But I will tell you in basketball, Bob Huggins would complain every 20 minutes about the travel and about that, because he's already upset about the situation currently in terms of geography. So that would be way worse. And the Big Ten would be better geography, but I don't know if that would make sense either. Do they need out, and where would they land?
Yeah, they would have to. Obviously, they would need out. Shane Lyon, I would guess that every athletic director since this report came out a couple of days ago has been on the phone.
Certainly the remaining Big 12 teams. I would, the teams I mentioned.
I guarantee you Big 12, Big 10 schools or
yeah.
Everyone is touching base. They're looking,
Right.
talking about down the road. You got to be proactive in this. If you're just sitting around waiting for something to happen, then you're left with your pants down.
Yeah, and they were schools left with their pants down last time.
Yeah, absolutely. That can't happen. You need to be either looking to recruits, coming up with scenarios on poaching schools, even if you don't think you need them. Right. Or you need to be looking at schools in your conference that you think could be candidates to leave, to make sure everything's stable.
Yeah, because other like Oklahoma and Texas lead the Big 12. You have this occur. It wouldn't shock me if all of a sudden 2 schools out of the Big 10 would want to leave. Or I mean, obviously everyone can't be in the SEC. Then you're looking at a pro league, but who knows?
Yeah, it just makes sense that the ACC would take. I know their commissioner yesterday said that they're good with the amount of schools, and that's the answer.
They don't need another one, right?
Yeah, that's the answer you have to have. But West Virginia just seems like the ideal school. It would fit in perfectly geographically with a lot of those rivalries. You throw them in there with Virginia Tech, Pitt, Louisville. That's
Syracuse. Yeah,
Syracuse
in basketball.
That just makes too much sense. And then you have all the schools down in North Carolina, in Georgia.
Miami, Florida State. I mean,
and those are your 2 conferences. It just makes too much sense. And West Virginia would boost them up athletically. I'm not getting into any academic talk and all. We're here to talk football.
Right.
Athletically, West Virginia would no doubt in all the sports would make the ACC a better conference. And, obviously that would that should be the move, but who knows where this is headed. And it wouldn't shock me at all to see the Big 10. The Big 10 is always that school that has the power. We talk about Oklahoma and Texas being the power schools in the in the Big 12. The Big 10 is the power conference. That's the school that they're a notch below the SEC.
We saw what happened with COVID. They proved that with COVID. They made an announcement: we're not going to play by your rules, and everyone, okay, oh man, we got to sit waiting for them. But the Big 10 does.
They carry a lot of power, and you just have to wonder. Corey Geiger on Nittany Sports Now ran
I saw that. Yeah,
that was an interesting. That was an interesting poll, and if they were to expand, the obvious school to join, the 2 obvious schools to join them, the Big 10 would be Pitt or Syracuse.
Right.
It's just so stupid, Corey or Mike. I'm just thinking about Penn State now.
Yeah.
It's just so it hurts your brain to think about conferences that should be.
It just seems like geography. It's just so easy to do. I get obviously this is about money, but that's how you have the rivalries based on geography in college sports. And what I also don't get is, and this should be something that happens at some point here if you're going to realign again. Can we change the name of these conferences? I mean, Atlantic Coast Conference, West Virginia goes in there. How many schools are on the coast? Certainly not Pitt, certainly not Syracuse, certainly not West Virginia if they would go. Big 10, you're going to have 14 schools and be called the Big 10, Pac-12. It's ridiculous. Big 12, they don't even have 12 schools. So let's just change the name of these conferences at the very, very least and not make it so asinine. I will ask this, though, because the Big 10 has been the other conversation for West Virginia. The Big 10 maybe could be that conference that would take the Mountaineers. Maybe they would want to be there. They do have the Penn State similar connection. It'd be better than the Big 12 in terms of geography and travel. I think the ACC would make more sense. And again, as you said, I do think it would be beneficial to both West Virginia and the ACC. You would gain a school that not only would be competitive in football and men's basketball and arguably elite in men's basketball, but very competitive and a contender across the board athletic program wise, all of the teams. That's rare to say. Women's sports, all the way. I mean, rifling, going to swimming, going to soccer. It's weird. Maybe they would be a little intimidated in some of those sports to put them in there, but it would be great for recruiting. It would help the conference, and you get a major fan base that would be in there. So it would only increase ratings. But from the Pitt perspective, for Pittsburgh Sports Now as well, number one, would Pitt be welcoming? I mean, they're not going to say this openly that they wouldn't be, because obviously that's a rival who they want to play games with, and that's close geographically. So I'm sure they would say, come on, and it would be sharing media coverage. But secretly, would Pitt love that? Because it would be a very similar school that now in a recruiting battle would say, we're 70 miles south in the same conference and actually been a little better recently in some of these sports. That might be a problem for them recruiting wise. And the second end of things for Pitt, you mentioned Corey's article in Nittany Sports Now and the impact potentially to the Big Ten. If you're Pitt, do you maybe say, okay, West Virginia, you go to the ACC, we don't care what you're going to do, but now we're going to be welcoming to going to the Big Ten? Or is Pitt better where they are and they should just stay put?
Well, Pitt would never say this, but
right.
I would guess that if they ever had the opportunity to jump ship and go to the Big Ten, they would jump to the Big Ten.
They would.
Yeah.
You think? Yeah. Would that be better for them as a program? Would you think it'd be better? You could kind of end up in the situation.
I think it would be. I think it would be equal. I think it would be equal. The Big Ten in basketball is just as tough. I think brand wise, it might help them out as far as style of play. Maybe the Big Ten would help them out. Would be a little bit better.
Maybe boost money wise. That's what's happening.
Yeah,
in the Big 12, it's boosted money wise.
In Big Ten for football,
right?
You know, I know there's quality and everything, but you know, let's be honest. There's three teams that really rule that. You know, that rule those. That
yeah, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Yeah,
and was exactly.
And Wisconsin, you could throw in. Yeah. Better than Michigan's been, but Michigan's still a top dog.
I don't think that Pitt would object anything with West Virginia. It's kind of funny. My sense in the Pitt fans is that while there's a rivalry with West Virginia, I think Pitt fans just despise Penn State.
Right.
I don't think that's the case with West Virginia. I think that there's a healthy rivalry there. I think they kind of like the rivalry, and I think through all this conference realignment and stuff, the West Virginia and Pitt athletic departments have kept a good relationship. They've scheduled games.
Yeah.
That
would be ruined if they wouldn't be welcoming a WVU and screw the Mountaineers. So that I don't think they want to ruin that relationship.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. They've always maintained a good relationship, whereas the people at Penn State and Pitt, you know, flip the middle finger at each other.
It's been rough. Yeah, Joe Paterno said you had to be in the Big Ten to play us and all of that.
And they both have rivalries, but it's kind of it's a different kind of rivalry. And I don't think the people at Pitt, you know, obviously Pitt doesn't control what's going to happen with West Virginia, but if they had a vote, I don't think they would have any problem teaming up. I think it only helps out their athletic departments. They have a natural rivalry that's going to fill up Pitt Stadium every year, or fill up Heinz Field every year. Yeah. I don't think that would be a problem at all.
Yeah, saying Pitt Stadium and the on-campus debate will be a whole nother conversation. That's going to get some people triggered there. One of my friends, James Santelli, he listens to this sometimes. He's going to go nuts. But yeah, it almost would be really wouldn't that be the most ironic kind of kick in the pants if somehow West Virginia would get in the ACC and another conference realignment. They already have the connection to be able to play again. They have the relationship being solid athletic department wise and kind of fan wise in the rivalry. And then somehow Pitt would go to the Big Ten. It would almost be like God does not want this to occur. I mean, it would be ridiculous. But I would just love
nothing would shock me these days to be at the stage in my life where I am now, where as opposed to when I was a kid and I had no idea what the hell was going on. To have a conference with Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, Syracuse, the teams that are supposed to be playing each other.
Even Ohio State, who would win it.
Yeah, they're playing Georgia Tech. What the hell is Pitt playing Georgia Tech for?
Yeah.
You know, it just makes zero sense. But
that's the West Virginia fan perspective in terms of the Big 12 issue. Now, it has boosted money-wise, like you mentioned, it would for Pitt if they were in the Big 10. Certainly, the clout has been there that's led to these new facilities. They've very much been competitive in basketball, arguably winning it. They've been in that conference title game a couple times. Football, they're in a rebuild, but they're still competitive in some regard. But that's the nail on the head why I think Mountaineer fans have not liked the Big 12, why they wanted to be in the ACC, why they would prefer the situation that you're discussing and that would occur is because, let's face it, West Virginia currently has no rivals, certainly not in conference. Yeah, you want to beat Oklahoma, but that's like saying Pitt's a rival would be a rival with an Ohio State if they were in the Big Ten. Yeah, but what can you do every now and then? And WVU's beaten Texas and ruined some seasons for them, and horns down and horns up and all of that. But is that really a rivalry?
Right.
Oklahoma State, they ruined some Mountaineer seasons, but is that really a rivalry, even though they're similar programs historically? They don't really have a rival. TCU, I mean, they got to travel ridiculous lengths to play any of these teams. It's just not, there's not rivalries there. And that's why they're trying to bring back the games against Virginia Tech, against Pitt, against Penn State, to bring some geographic rivals in there. What I will say this would also do is we'll kind of maybe leave it with this is, unfortunately, if this would happen sooner than later and you have to realign things, and this is, again, why I think the Mountaineers, because some people are saying we'll go in the SEC, that would just be doomsday, certainly for football, is because you already have these deals, and Pitt has this, West Virginia has this, all these schools have this, in terms of out-of-conference games that you have lined up for 6 years from now. Okay, everyone has those deals, some that we know, some that have not even been announced, but the deal is ready. The pen is about to hit paper. If you realign the conferences, some of these schools might have to rethink, do I want to do that deal? I mean, obviously they have to, but is that as great? Because if you're in certain conferences, do you want to play a really murderer's row out of conference schedule as well as, say, the SEC or as well as the Big Ten? Because now you're in a situation where if you're Pitt now in the Big Ten or WVU somehow in the SEC, you're looking at, you're losing 5 games a year, half of the, I mean, WVU was playing Alabama a couple of years ago and out of conference. You can't have those out of conference games be too tough if your in conference is brutal, because you got to win a certain amount, but you got to have the schedule also be competitive. It's that wire that you got to walk that's just impossible to be able to determine. And of course, all of this is about money. And I will say, because this hasn't been brought up, but I'm sure it will be, no matter what occurs, I'm sure people can want it. I also heard the report recently, the ACC commissioner did say to the Associated Press, if he has his way, he wants Notre Dame to be a full-time member. I don't see it happening. I don't see how it benefits Notre Dame money-wise, which is what this is all about. I know with the playoff expansion that they would get bumped out of being a top 4 seed, but there's tons of money that's going to be kicked back to them. If that would occur, that probably will be changed. When you have your own television station covering you and all your games are on a major outlet like NBC, I don't know how any other conference can match that money-wise, because they can't put you on national TV every day, every game. And that's what they have now. So I don't see that happening. But this is just going to have legs. It does appear, honestly, when this news first came out, I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought, okay, they won it, but it's not going to happen somehow. They have the legal contracts, but it does appear, when they missed that conference call, I said to myself, oh man, they won out. I mean, those little things, those subtle jabs that are going on.
It's just a matter, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how they're trying to make it financially better for them, both money they're taking in and money they're going to have to pay out to the Big 12 conference. Right. And then they have to figure out all these conferences, as we stated at the beginning. This is just going to lead to instability throughout college sports, and there's going to be rumor after rumor about what's going to happen.
There will be other programs that don't want to leave.
Right. Yeah, there's always been talk about conferences changing. There's always, every couple years, about teams adding to the Big Ten and what schools they might poach, and same with the ACC and stuff like that. And this is just going to change. And then with a conference like the Pac-12 that is unstable as it is, it's gonna we're gonna be getting rumors throughout the season. The only thing we know is all these schools will be in place for the 2021 season. After that, who knows?
Yeah, and it's the same thing. We won't have expansion until after that point as well. But all of this will just get really crazy after that season does close. That'll be an historic end of an era in many respects. But conferences need to be proactive on who they want to take, on who they think may leave. I'm sure a lot of other schools are talking about, do I like my conference? Do I want to leave? If Pitt ever wants in the Big Ten, this probably will be the time to make that move. We'll see if they're welcoming. WVU needs to be immediately proactive because they're maybe more impacted than any other school in the country from what they bring to the table, but they got to get out of where they are now, clearly. And if the ACC still doesn't want them, they got to call the Big Ten and offer some under the table deals, because if they don't get in there, they're really screwed. Pac-12 geographically doesn't work, and otherwise it would be nice. And the SEC would just be ridiculous. And honestly, I'll kind of leave the fans with this for comments. If this would occur and Texas and Oklahoma get to the SEC, does the SEC even stay as it is? People aren't even really discussing this. They're saying what's going to come and what's going to go to these other conferences. The SEC would obviously be fine, competitive-wise, money-wise, ratings-wise, interest-wise, geographic-wise. It wouldn't be that even bad. But some of those schools maybe would want out of there. Maybe they would split the conference. Maybe you'd have two freaking conferences because you would have murderer's row all through that conference. So you have two conferences out of the SEC, and maybe West Virginia could get in one of those. Maybe it wouldn't be what it is now. So everything potentially could change, and it's all on the table. This isn't small. This isn't like West Virginia or Pitt. Let's be real. If they would announce tomorrow they want to leave their conference, it would be a big deal. It would shake things up. But it wouldn't be the level of Texas and Oklahoma in college football saying they went out of their conference. If Alabama tomorrow wants out, and Auburn and Georgia want out of the SEC, or if USC, not Arizona, but USC would want out of the Pac-12, or if Florida State or Clemson would say, I want out of the ACC, the ACC would collapse. It would send ripple effects. It'd be very similar. So that's what's going on right now with these schools in the Big 12. Make sure to keep it here in Pittsburgh Sports Live. To subscribe, follow WV Sports Now, as well as Pittsburgh Sports Now for all this coverage. And I also have a full legit West Virginia reaction program that touches on all of this as well on the latest episode of Mic Drop that will drop, pun intended, on Pittsburgh Sports Live and WV Sports Now sometime coming up as well. For Mike Fakovic, and I'm Mike Osti, and boy, I'm almost getting sweaty talking about this. It's just this can grind everyone's gears, and this is a conversation that everyone loves to have, even if they say they hate having it. Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. Contact Doug Martin at 412-849-5894. Have a great weekend, guys.